please?
Yes. Alderwoman Bartleson? Here. Alderman Coretta?
Here.
Alderman Vandermeer?
Here.
Alderman Testa?
Here.
Alderman Smith?
Here.
Alderman Gilogly?
Here.
Alderman Capadona?
Here.
And Alderman Capadronos. Or, I'm sorry, Petrakos. Absent.
Capatrocos.
Petrakis.
And
It's
on.
a new name. It's for not being here.
That's right.
We congratulate Mr. Petrakos and his wife. They had a baby.
That's true. Jim's not here because of his new
Very
baby.
good.
So,
Is that why he's not here?
Yes, that's a pretty good excuse.
full Greek
Good
tradition,
excuse.
First word curse.
right?
Got a couple more to go.
All right. Yeah, that's right. It's something to do in the first ward.
I know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I see Steve, our police chaplain's here. Would you like to open us up?
God, I just want to take this time to thank you for the beautiful weather we've been having this weekend, our great city of Lockport, and how we live in peace here. And I just call out that you would just help our police personnel, that you would give them wisdom when they go on calls, when they pull people over, that you would just keep them safe. And for our fire personnel, our paramedics, when they're on calls, that you would just keep them safe also, God. And that tonight that you would give our leaders here wisdom, and that you would have your way here. And I also just ask for a little help in LA tonight. Our cubbies need it, and we're getting a little nervous here. Just thank you. In God's name, amen.
Very good. Well, I want to, we're going to have the Maloney's come up here in a second, but we'll wait for Tom to leave because I don't want them to be interrupted. I can say this, I was at ICSC conference today. It was a good conference. This is where the retailers are. There's 5 junior anchors now that are lining up. I think they're very close. It's kind of like herding cats. And then we had interest from one of the big boxes that had kind of went by the wayside, but they had a meeting they called for us today. So there's a lot of good, positive things going on. So it's, I know it's maddening. It takes forever. And it always seems like there's something that throws a wrench into it, but it's slowly coming together. So I think this is, clearly the most productive ICSC conference I'd been to in the 3 years we've been going. So good stuff. And I'll tell you what, it's directly because of the things this council's done. There's no doubt. When I told that one big box about the housing starts and the business parks that have been filling out, that's why they're talking to us. So it's a direct result of what you guys have done up here. When we lowered the tap-on fees and encouraged the housing starts back, it's a direct result of all the hard work that staff did, getting that Gauger Road back open again. That stoplight held up the business park. It wasn't going to go anywhere if it wasn't for the hard work of the staff getting that road open with the temporary light. That would not have happened. So it's the reason these guys are talking to us is because of the hard work that everyone's done up here. So congratulations. We're going to see it come to fruition here soon.
Sounds good.
All right, looks like Tom is out of the way. Thanks for coming out here, Tom. We appreciate it. I'd like to bring up the Maloneys, if you come up here. Now, is this any relation to Bill Maloney? No. Different Maloneys. Okay.
Thank goodness.
Okay.
Hello,
Maureen.
everyone. I'm Maureen Maloney. I reside at 2509 South Farrell Road. The reason I'm here today is to introduce all of you and all of our Lockport neighbors to our low-cost dumpster rental company. My husband and I are the owners of Big Box Disposal. It has been operated by our family since 2003. We service all of the southwest suburbs and have been beating our competitors' pricing for the last 13 years. Our customer service is first rate. When you call us, you'll get a live person on the phone, usually me or my husband. We also leave our dumpsters on your site longer than our competitors allow. We always try to patronize Lockport businesses, and we hope that in the future, if you should ever need a dumpster, that you might consider us. Not only because our pricing is very good, but because we live in Lockport, our children went to school in Lockport, and we are your neighbors. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Maureen. All right. Oh, I'm going to make I know I read this proclamation last meeting because I wanted to get it out there before our library week started. But nobody from the library was here, so we felt bad. So we're going to read it again because it's so good, Scott. All right, so we're going to do Friends of the White Oak Library District Week proclamation. Whereas Friends of the White Oak Library District raise money that enable our library to move from good to great, providing the resources for additional programming, much-needed equipment, support for children's summer reading, and special events throughout the year. Whereas the work of the Friends highlights an ongoing basis the fact that our library is the cornerstone of the community, providing opportunities for all to engage in the joy of lifelong learning and connect with the thoughts and ideas of others from ages past to the present. Whereas the Friends understand the critical importance of well-funded libraries and advocate to ensure that our library gets the resources it needs to provide a wide variety of services to all ages, including access to print and electronic materials, along with the expert assistance in research, readers' advisories, and children's services. Whereas Friends' gift of their time and commitment to the library sets an example for all in how volunteerism leads to a positive civic engagement and the betterment of our community. Now, therefore, be it resolved that Mayor Streit proclaims and the City Council proclaim October 16th through the 22nd, 2016, as Friends of the White Oak Library District Week in Lockport, Illinois, and urges everyone to join the Friends of the Library and thank them for all they do to make our library and community so much better. I'd like to acknowledge that and say, is this something we're willing to pass? Can I have all ayes?
Aye.
All right. Very good. Scott, we do appreciate you in the library. My children, we get down there once a week. We help sustain you with all our late fees. But they always have a good time. Zoe's doing that animation class right now. She just is in love with it. Comes home, brings it up on the computer, works at home. And we're really so glad the library is in our town where it's at and just what the services you provide. So thank you again, Scott. All right. So I believe that, Ben, you wanted to move some things around? Oh, I'm sorry. Did
yeah,
you
we
guys,
could do some-
the mayor liaison?
I have one thing.
Yeah, please.
I do too.
Oh, good, good. I'm so sorry.
Go ahead, Joanne.
Well, I just wanted to reiterate about the gateway signs that we've been working on. IDOT denied the actual first plans that we had for our signs for 159th Street. We needed to have breakaway walls, and the ones that we had picked out were not going to fall in the category that they wanted it to. So, but they are okay with the green signs that we have going on throughout the city of Lockport. So we're going to get together and try to design a sign for 159th Street. We're still going to make plans for a sign for 159th Street, although once the other sign going into the Lockport Square goes up, we may or may not need a sign on 159th Street, but we still will have the landscaping that we've been talking about to kind of dress it up and have it look nice as people are coming into Lockport. The lead sign on 159th Street will be up in 30 to 60 days in time to advertise Christmas in the square. Let's see, and we'll see how that looks and decide if we want an additional sign on the median at that point. We budgeted $50,000 next year for beautification entryways, and if budget approved, we can start trees and plantings and green sign on 159th median in the spring. So we should have enough funds that we can get started. At least you can start seeing something happening on 159th Street. But it's not out of the question that, you know, we're not going to have a sign as people come in to say, welcome to historical Lockport.
Okay.
So, okay.
Well, thanks, Joanne. Thanks for staying on that.
Then I have something to go along with the mayor's vision of doing something on Veterans Day. We ended up setting up a Veteran Day event right here in City Council chambers. It'll be on November 11th. I believe that's a Friday, 10 a.m. right here in council chambers. You have a gathering. I'll talk to the veterans. We already talked to the VFW, the American Legion, you know, to honor, you know, a lot of the guys. And then, of course, with Bill Maloney's help, too. So November 11th, 10 a.m., 3rd floor, City Hall.
Right on. And I'm going to have a gift certificate to the public landing, and it's going to be awarded to the veteran who could tell me why his service is better than all the others. So, yes. I'm serious, man.
Again, what time was it?
All right. Anybody else? What do you got there?
Last Thursday, I attended the 76th Annual Illinois Fire Safety Alliance luncheon. The city of Lockport was received one of 6 life safety awards. This is what we received. Nice heavy crystal, says City of Lockport Life Safety Award, City of Lockport, October 13, 2016. We were the only community to receive such an award. We received the award for the code compliance grant that I believe we passed about 18 months ago. That was the grant where they came out of a conversation I had with Ben about we need to do something for sprinklers within the downtown area, make these buildings compliant, because that seems to be a problem, because the sprinkler system could be anywhere from $20,000 to $100,000 to sprinkle a building. That idea was then handed over to Pam. She did a great job, and it came up with the code compliance grant. So I sat with a number of fire chiefs from northeastern Illinois. A number of the fire chiefs were very interested in what we did and how it could be applied to their communities. So it's a pretty big deal for us to receive such an award. It's a big deal. So I'll pass around. It's very heavy. So
Very good. Thanks for that update, Darren, and being able to attend. Anybody else have anything? All good? Okay. All right. Ben, did you want to move some stuff around?
Thank you, Mayor. We're going to stay with planning and zoning 1 and 2, and then we'll jump around a little bit. I'll just call those out as we go around a little bit.
Okay. Sounds good.
So Pam can start.
Thank you. This evening, my first item is ML Realty, and Tim Geisler is present this evening, is seeking approval of a final development plan for their building number 3, along with the associated final subdivision plat. I've identified the plans that are being considered this evening. The proposed site layout is in conformance with the plans that were approved as part of the preliminary PUD. The preliminary plan showed a building a little smaller of about 171,000 square feet on a 12.5 acre lot. The final plan shows a 181,000 square foot building on an 8.53 acre lot. The lot this evening is smaller because the detention areas that are located there to the south of there have been previously subdivided and platted on their own lots. I've identified some of the key changes between the plans. In several areas, for the lot size is decreased, the building totals increased. There's been no change to the building orientation. Parking has slightly decreased. Truck docks have decreased. The Plan and Zoning Commission considered these requests at their regular meeting at the October 11th meeting. The applicant was present for questions. The commission identified a correction to staff's report regarding some square footage of the building, and then asked the applicant to install a sidewalk connection along the eastern row of parking on the west side of the building. By a vote of 6-0, the Plan and Zoning Commission did recommend approval of the plans, subject to 2 conditions. The first one, which staff is seeking, as well as the applicant is seeking, some direction from council. It has to do about installing a sidewalk connection to the front door or an additional sidewalk along the eastern row of parking on the west side of the building. I just want to note that that there is included already the standard sidewalk connection to the parking lot that's provided throughout the park, as well as very common practice throughout most of the developments in the city, commercial as well. So we would seek direction on whether or not the applicant should proceed with the installation of an additional connection sidewalk. The other item that will remain conditions of any approving ordinance is our standard and approved a financial guarantee for all public and private site improvements, as well as required engineering review and inspection fees. In addition to Building 2 and Building 3 are next to one another. When you look at the site plan, Building 3 takes its access off of a driveway that is shared with Building 2. However, there needs to be a cross connection easement that allows Building 3 to use that. So we're working with the applicant on making sure that an approved and recorded cross-access easement is provided for this purpose. With that being said, we would be seeking direction to place these requested actions on your November 2nd meeting for final consideration.
All right. What's council's thoughts on the sidewalk question?
Well, I was at the meeting, and this was a situation where I thought a couple of members of the planning commission overstepped their authority. It was a situation where something that they thought might be nice, might be great. The plans that were submitted by ML for this and all other development they've had out there, they've met all of our codes, our development codes, municipal codes. It's been looked by our engineering staff, the planning and zoning engineer, our staff, and this number one with the site, it just needs to be stricken from the recommendations. It's totally inappropriate what a couple of members of the planning commission did on this.
Well, I don't always mind another set of eyes and suggestions on things, Darren, but I think if it fits within our current zoning and codes, I'd be fine with it as it is without taking into consider those recommendations, but I don't mind when people speak up. It's all right. Anybody else have any other thoughts? All right, so probably just leave it as is without having to be concerned about the extra. Okay.
Thank you.
Is this something staff is recommending too? I mean, what staff's,
No, staff did not recommend it. Staff was comfortable with what was proposed, because as I stated, that's common practice in that business park, and common practice is really throughout a lot of other commercial developments. This was going above and beyond what was really necessary and needed.
Okay.
I'm assuming that their position, or at least their belief, is that it shouldn't be required, right?
No, they wanted because they wanted, two people wanted.
No.
He's asking about ML.
ML, right.
ML was willing to do whatever the council would ultimately decide. I suggested that before they went and made that change to the plan, that we seek direction from you all first.
Well, and like I said, I think keeping it as, things that we've agreed upon in the past is probably good practice. So unless there's a really, really good reason to change things, I recommend sticking with what has been proposed already.
Yeah, I think unless there's a safety concern for some reason, I don't think that there's any reason to deviate from what the code is and what common practice is.
Okay. And
So
then,
did you, I think did you want to say something? Oh. Oh, okay, okay.
and what else, Pam? Was there something else you wanted?
No, just that.
All right. You guys good with putting this on a consent agenda for next time?
Yes.
Everybody good? All right, consent, please, Alice.
Thank you.
All right, what else you got?
The next one, same developer, ML Realty Partners, is seeking approval for a final development plan for building number 9, and then the associated subdivision plat as well. I have to apologize, the report that you received, the table that was included in my report is not the table that represents this project, so I'm going to just go briefly through what the highlights of the proposed plan are compared to the original PUD. The number of lots on the original PUD was 1 lot, and it included all of the detention. With the proposal this evening, there's 1 lot for the building, 1 lot for the stormwater management, which are the existing ponds, and then there's a 3rd parcel that you may have noticed on the plan, which is to be transferred to the city for a future well site, and that's as per the development agreement. The lot size is 19.83 on the original plan. Because the detention is being separated out, the building lot is 17.23 acres, the detention is 2.602 acres. The original building on the PUD was almost 300,000. This one's 293,790, so slight decrease. Sorry. The building orientation is the same. There's a little fewer truck docks than what was on the original plan, and a little fewer parking spaces. Again, the Plan Commission considered this at their October 11th meeting. The Plan Commission had several questions. Asked about when they thought the park would be developed, because as we all know, it's going very quickly. Market conditions have been very good for this. What happens if more than 3% of parking is required? And this is based on, staff typically asks industrial applicants to provide a ratio of office to warehouse manufacturing of 10% office and 90% office warehouse. And because of the experience of what's going on in this park and a couple other buildings that have been built out there, the applicant feels comfortable that what's being provided, which is about 3%, is sufficient. And then if there is any issue with it, it's determined by the applicant, and there is always opportunity to convert some of the trailer storage spaces into standard parking spaces. And then there was an issue about some grading lines that were shown on the landscape plan, but that was an error because of a CAD layer not being turned off. By a vote of 6-0, the Plan and Zoning Commission did recommend approval of all the plans, and they are just subject to our standard conditions regarding the letter of credit and the engineering review and inspection fees. And then just also a reminder that the grant of easement be approved and recorded for the transfer of the property to the city. With this one, same thing, we're seeking the council to direct this to the November 2nd meeting for final consideration.
All right, thoughts, concerns? Dan, you're pretty familiar with these, kind of the water system and wells. What's your background on this well site? Is that something that's probably a possibility?
The well site out there, that falls within that long run seep, and so I would say that it's it's highly unlikely that we would go ahead and get any U.S. Fish and Wildlife approval of that site.
Right.
So.
How much acreage does that represent, that well site?
It was supposed to be 100 by 100 per the
About an
development
acre.
agreement. It's about that same size. I think was it 80 by 120 or something? I think it was.
Okay.
And
And then-
just so you know, the location of that, the applicant did work with Strand and with our engineering department. Several sites were identified, and the applicant had chosen that one as being the best all around for the city as well as for his development on that parcel. So they did work together to choose that location.
All right. Anything else? All right, so everybody good with consent on this? Alice, please. All right. Did you want to do CA1, or do you want to jump down to,
Thank you, Mayor. I would like to jump down to AT1 on Exeter. I know the petitioner's here. I know Pam and Tom were going to tag team this one a little bit. AT1.
I'll let you do the development.
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, I'll lead off and I'll hand it off to Pam then. This was before you in 1995 for the approval of a development agreement for the parcel that's located at the northwest corner of 355 and 163rd, I believe it is. Since then, the developer has purchased a small parcel of property that is adjacent to the main parcel that was purchased previously. And the developer would now like to include that small parcel into the full development. What's before you tonight is an amendment to the development agreement that adds the small parcel to the agreement. It'll be incorporated into the full development, and I think Pam will go through the details of it. This is not an annexation agreement, it's a development agreement, does not require a public hearing, so it's before you on first reading this evening, and if you so choose, we could put it on the next agenda for formal approval. Pam.
Yes. And also, Exeter Lockport Land LLC, Tom Theobald, I'm sorry, I spelled his name incorrectly, he is present this evening. They're seeking approval of annexation and rezoning for the parcel that Tom has just referenced, the existing residential parcel, which we refer to as the Richards property. They're also seeking an amendment to the original special use permit for planned industrial development, and this is essentially to incorporate that residential parcel into the overall industrial park, as well as an amendment to the preliminary development plan and final development plans and subdivision plat for a business park, which will consist of 2 buildings and a total of 5 lots. Lot 1 would include a 800,000 square foot building. Lot 2 would include a 302,400 square foot building, and lots 3, 4, and 5 would be designated for detention purposes. The applicant does anticipate constructing this project in a single phase, and I can account for the fact that today they submitted their building permit, so they are in fact submitting in a single phase. A summary of some of the key changes. Number of buildings have remained the same. The building sizes overall have slightly increased. There's been no change to the orientation or the number of truck docks. Trailer parking has seen a slight increase of 7 spaces. Parking spaces have seen a decrease, but the number referenced does include land bank spaces. This did come up at the Plan Commission as to how we could go from 737 that was shown on the tandem plan down to 334. and the applicant just clarified that, you know, given their expertise in the field and how they anticipate marketing these buildings, that the number of parking spaces being shown are more than adequate to accommodate the need. An additional reduction in the overall green space. When Tandem came in, they had asked for a reduction from 35% down to 34%. The applicant this evening is asking for an additional 2% reduction. The lot areas have both increased in size due to the additional parcel, and there's been no change to the number of lots from what was approved to what is before you this evening. This item went to the Plan Commission for a public hearing on September 13th. There was only one resident that was present, and he basically was concerned about various truck activity. The applicant did respond accordingly. The Plan and Zoning Commission had expressed several comments during the meeting. The use of screen walls versus installing more landscaping or berm, the use of metal halide lighting versus LED. They did ask the applicant to verify the type of lighting that's being used at Panduit, as well as along 163rd Street. The big issue was the alignment of the eastern driveway with the Sagebrook subdivision entrance. They have, in fact, the plans that you have before you this evening does reflect that alignment. Explanation for the deviations and variances from the code with respect to the landscape ratio and lot coverage, the light levels throughout, change in the number of parking spaces, status of the recapture agreement with Panattoni, the start date and completion dates, sidewalks, the cash contribution in lieu of installing, and the hours of operation for truck traffic. The commission encouraged them to be a good neighbor. The small parcel is being proposed for annexation and rezoning to M1, which is what the rest of the property is zoned. Sorry. And with that, the applicant, or the Plan and Zoning Commission did, by a vote of 4-0, they did recommend approval of the annexation and rezoning to the M1, the amendment to the special use permit with the 2 variations or deviations, the amendment to the preliminary development plan and final development plans and subdivision plat, subject to several conditions. I've noted what those conditions are, and they've addressed all of them. There will be a couple that, again, will remain conditions in the approving ordinance. The common ones, the financial guarantee and the engineering inspection fees. The other is that per their development agreement, they are obligated to provide a cash in lieu of installing the public sidewalk. The original amount was $35,000, but because of the incorporation now of that additional parcel, the amount has gone up to $40,606, and the applicant has been advised of that additional amount. In addition to that, they are obligated still to the recapture payments to the Panattoni development for the construction of Gauger Road. And then lastly, concurrent with the issuance of a second building permit, they shall pay a cash contribution of $50,000 for a share of future 163rd Street signal. So they're aware of all those conditions and they agree to comply. With that being said, I seek direction to place this First Amendment to the development agreement and all the requested actions on the November 2nd City Council agenda for final consideration. And Tom Theobald with Exeter is present this evening.
Okay. Thoughts, concerns, questions?
I just have a question about for Pam. In the cash contribution for constructing the sidewalk. So should the city then choose to build a sidewalk on that property, we would use that
Yes.
cash
That's correct.
for the sidewalk?
Yes.
That's really all I want to know.
Yeah. And I will work with Lisa as we get all the different financial obligations to make sure that the finance department knows how to earmark that money.
Yeah, do we, because this isn't, we've done this a couple times now, do we encumber that money then? Or it's restricted for sidewalks? Or could it be like bike paths, I mean,
Yes, whatever council decides, if they don't want a sidewalk, we
Yeah.
can restrict it for.
does it have to be right there, or could it be for other bike path? How are those funds restricted? Is it for this property on 163rd Street, or could that $40,000 be used for a sidewalk, you know, downtown or on the west side or something like that?
They have to look into if the council decides to not put that sidewalk in, where we could use that money.
We are also looking at a potential grant. I've talked to their neighbors at Panduit, and we stressed a concern in regards to potential residents from Sagebrook coming out and having a safe path to the high school. Panduit has, in early discussions with me, been open to participating in a grant program, whether through an outside agency or through our 50/50 program, where we might be able to not only use the funds for the Exeter part, but we could get some funds from Panduit to make sure that the full sidewalk connection can happen. So we're going to work with engineering a little bit and them. I mean, they're out there grading. We might ask them to do some additional grading over by the sidewalk while they're out there. But other than that, it's the standard cash in lieu of. And then our intent, I think our intent would be to bring something back to you in the future where we can install sidewalks.
And then you sort of addressed it, but the obvious question when looking at this was, you know, the size of the buildings is going up about 15%. Parking spaces are being cut relatively in half, right? I'm no expert. It looked like the previous number of parking spaces sure seemed like a lot. Is this now at a standard ratio? I mean, is this something that we're comfortable with? Are buildings of this size typically with this amount of parking spaces?
I would defer to the applicant, only because the number of parking spaces is very market-driven by the tenant that they put inside that building. That has been a standard response, even from our other developers of industrial parks, is that the number of parking spaces is very much tenant-driven. Would you like Tom to
Just, that could become, I just don't want to see that become a busy, you know, parking on 163rd Street, like you said with Sagebrook, and as I think, you know, a little bit east, that's even though there's not many houses kind of in that area, it's actually a main way to get to the high school for many kids. I see kids on bikes in the mornings. I just don't want a lot of overflow creating some issues there.
Good evening. I'm Tom Theobald with Exeter Property Group. And to answer your question or to provide some insight there, the original development plan was prepared by Tandem Development. We since acquired the property from them, and as we acquired it, we recognized that, in our opinion, that was a lot more auto parking that was put on the plan that was going to be necessary. We have approximately 110 million square feet of industrial buildings across the United States, and we feel like we have sized the auto parking for this particular product, if you will, appropriately.
Well, I guess what's the product? I mean, the product when Tandem was here, it was a little bit more of a business park. Are you guys seeing it differently now?
We believe we're gonna see very light industrial, maybe some light manufacturing, but primarily distribution.
I mean, I like the original Tandem idea, is the problem. So when I hear reduction in parking, it's because it sounds like it's because you guys want to do, you know, it's less people working there and just more trucks in and out. So that's been my concern here now. And tell me again why, because you said, Jason, you see a lot of people on bikes going through here. I don't live in this neck
I
of the
wouldn't
woods.
even say a lot, but I drive through the area
Did they just drive down the center of the street?
on the bikes.
Yeah.
The reason I noticed it is because on Farrell and 163rd, there's really nowhere to go. It's kind of it's an open bridge. There's room on the sides, but you'll see bike riders, like high school kids, just kind of on the shoulder, and there's enough room for them. But crossing over Farrell and going down 163rd, it's kind of not ideal now, but it's probably not unsafe at a stop sign. I could see the potential of you're starting to get a lot of car traffic and parking in the street with no sidewalk, it becoming an issue. That's why I started on the sidewalk.
Yeah.
And then went to this. I don't know, right? I agree, you know, the previous parking spaces probably was a lot, right? And maybe you don't require that, but it just, the two things that change kind of both seem like they could be a little bit, I'm not an expert, but they could be problematic, so I was asking the questions.
All right. Well, so explain to me again why we won't have them just build the sidewalk, especially considering that, you know, if you guys seem to be changing the use to distribution. I have kids going to high school on that road. What's the, why not build the sidewalk? Why just take cash and forego it? What's the purpose of that? And go anywhere.
Well, this issue was discussed this was an obligation that was approved at the preliminary PUD level. I believe at the time, and I have to defer to Amy on some of this because she was involved with this issue too. I think some of the concern was that if the sidewalk went in, it would go nowhere. It wasn't connecting to anything. And so the thought was that it was best to just get the cash, and then when a sidewalk, whether it be a grant or some other sort of funding mechanism, the city would be responsible for it, that we would have the cash to apply towards the installation of that
And I
sidewalk.
think no matter what, on the east side of that property, it's gonna be a dead-ended sidewalk, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you can use the shoulder of the bridge to go further, but even that goes to over by Panantoni. But if somebody wanted to leave Sagebrook on a jog, they would have a safe route to get across a busy intersection. We've engaged the neighboring corporate center there with Panduit, and we're hopeful that this is all gonna work out, but we don't. So in that scenario, we're not sure we wanted to force the sidewalk in that would be going nowhere, and that we might be able to utilize some of those funds and get a grant that covers 50%, 80% of it and stretch it a little longer. So-
Even more broad is, that bike trail that might go in on 355 on the east side. I actually don't know how we really connect there, right? Because we have to somehow get a bike or sidewalk trail over 355 from the west to the east.
Sure.
I think from the east over is pretty easy, but this is obviously not this gentleman's issue to deal with, but.
Had many conversations on this topic with Mr. Petracco, so I know I couldn't be here tonight. We've deliberated about, and I think you've experienced some of those conversations with him as well in the past of, this is the debate we have. Do you put the sidewalks in even though they don't necessarily go anywhere, or do you take the cash in lieu of and then wait for grants or additional growth to put them all in at the same time that actually have a function? I think we've kind of deferred a couple different ways in the past. Right now, the precedence in the most recent years is that we've been taking the cash and trying to expand, whether utilizing our own 50/50 program or other grants. I know CMAP and CMAQ, I think, has some grants out there that we're gonna try to apply for. You may not see a sidewalk there until 2019, so that is the downside, that the grant periods and the installations and the awards take time. So if, certainly if the council decides that you'd rather see a sidewalk out there and they're out there grading and they can install a sidewalk, as part of their process, we can go that direction as well, so.
Well, I think I'm right. I'm looking at the map. There is a sidewalk on the south side, right?
Yes.
So where people live, there is a way to go. Nobody's gonna cross the street.
Dead end.
There's unincorporated homes over there, and there's a couple pieces of sidewalk, but they don't go anywhere either.
We also have to understand, once Sagebrook gets built out, you're gonna, corner behind Petroclus' house, there's gonna be a connection, there's gonna be a sidewalk connection there from Sagebrook over into Karen Springs. And that'll take, anybody who's riding a bike to high school, that's gonna be the route that they're gonna take.
I'm not sure the clarity of I know we had talked to J.J. Bennis and Amy in engineering about this, about the road improvements on that section of road. May not quite be set and determined where curb lines are gonna be and things, so I'm not sure if that's gonna affect exactly where the sidewalk would go. I think that was another reason to hold off until we can get those hammered out, but it certainly can be done
I know as
if
much
you wish
as
to put it in.
yeah, as much as I love sidewalks,
It's,
so I'm recalling, Walmart is the only safe place you can cross that road anyway.
The sidewalk
You know,
does dead end.
Anywhere else on that road, to me, crossing that on your own is a dangerous situation. That's my question.
let me
So why bring that sidewalk all the way down that far? I just don't
all right, let me
see it.
I don't wanna get off on a tangent. The sidewalk came up on my mind only because it's like I'm hearing a change of use from what we originally talked about when Tandem owned it. And if it's gonna be more truck heavy, that's why I thought, okay, how are we gonna, if people are over there? That was my concern. It's not like I'm hung up on sidewalks.
No.
I'm hung up on what's going on there. So that's my
We don't
concern
wanna
right now.
forget that either, so.
Yeah.
Well, we've been seeing, I think the market dictates, certainly the users, they're building this with an intent, where there could be some manufacturing, and certainly that's something different than distribution. You'll probably get a mix of both. If they're experienced players in the field and they feel like it fits their model, it should be fine. I don't think necessarily if there's a certain, what percentage do you stop and say too many trucks or too many cars in regards to a sidewalk? I think, a sidewalk is still appropriate regardless if it's cars or trucks. I guess when you put it in, I guess is the concern.
Look, I mean, I have no problem with the annexation of that one parcel. I mean, it makes perfect sense. It's the right thing to have happen for the development. I said my only flag that's
Yeah, and I think I'm still not really comfortable with the answer as to why the change in the amount of parking spaces. I mean, I understand, you know, you have 110 million square feet or whatever you said. It's sort of a generic answer, though.
I mean, it seems to me the change in parking is because before it was looked to be office and you'd have more workers there. Now that's not what's going on. That's why the reduction of parking. So it's taking a different route than what I was comfortable with before.
It is still an allowable use within the zone.
It does meet the ordinance.
With the agreement, with the development agreement, the uses were outlined in there.
Right.
Okay. All right, any other thoughts, concerns?
I just have a thought on the sidewalk. If a sidewalk gets put in, then there's more motivation to start building more sidewalks so that it continues on. I think if we don't do something now, then it's just gonna stay longer without a sidewalk where people, maybe even bikers or whatever, can use a sidewalk. I don't know, in my opinion, I'd rather have a sidewalk so that way that gives us the ambition to continue and put in a sidewalk in the near future.
I think you bring up a good point, Joanne. It's like we can say that every time we build something like this, oh, you know, it's not contiguous, so let's not build it. But eventually, who even remembers that there's $50,000 put aside for a sidewalk here? In 4 years, unless Darren, who remembers everything, is still here, no one's going to know that, and it just ends up having no sidewalk.
Right, and that's why in my opinion, I think we should move on with the sidewalk. That way, that gives us, you know, a goal to get that other sidewalk in. That's my opinion.
If I could just add one thing, the two parcels that are immediately to the east of the subject property, those are unincorporated, and the applicant has actually reached out to try to see about acquiring that property. It's in some sort of weird list that's like protected by the bank, and the bank will only take a message for interested parties to pass on to the ownerships of the trust. And there's not been a lot of response with respect to that. So those parcels are pretty sizable, and so if the sidewalk was installed, the sidewalk would just end at their property line.
Correct. Right. But as Joanne pointed out, if it's not put in now, probably never be put in.
And the shoulder there starts widening up too. I mean, there's access to the sidewalk.
But it's also, you know, for people that, you know, going back from Panduit and walking, it's, you know, I'm kind of with you, Joanne. I think we should just do these sidewalks. And if you've been working with Panduit, they seem very cooperative about extending that. I think we have an opportunity then to create a nice long sidewalk.
People like sidewalks, you guys, you know, whether it's a short one or not.
No
They'd rather
objection for
have
the petitioner, so
sidewalk.
that's fine. We
I
can
don't
do
want, I
that.
disagree. I think it's a dumb thing to put a sidewalk out in the middle of a,
I'm gonna do too.
it's,
And
if you wanna get in the.
really can't go.
Let's not
It
get
goes,
into
it goes all the, it'll eventually
Get in the
go all the way
sidewalk
from the Walmart at Farrell Road, all the way through. So,
It would connect Panduit in theory to I-3.
Nobody's forcing.
or it would
Bandit
connect,
hasn't said they're gonna do it
connects
yet.
this development over to the Walmart area. And so,
Bandit said we will look.
not
into
about
it. They
necessarily
haven't committed
walking
to it. They don't have
the
to.
highway and stopping. It's about having employees and people be able to walk, get outside. People like to walk at
You're
the right
forgetting
time.
it.
It's
Panduit
about-
hasn't committed it.
But I think they were very open to it. Of course, they haven't.
It's still open, actually doing that is.
Well, that's how we gotta line up things as we go, JR. So, you know, that's a good
It should be a motivation for us.
step one, you know, to getting it done, is that the other positive and open to it.
Since we're on the topic of for the sidewalk.
You know, Jim Petrakis would love to be here and talk about sidewalks.
Yeah, Jimmy Sidewalk.
There you go.
There's certainly no objection from petitioner on the sidewalks. You can certainly put this as an action item and
All right, we'll put it,
further amongst
then
each
let's do
other's-
that. Let's put
Let's
it,
do that.
let's put it as an action item. Obviously, the sidewalks are, you know, it's not a make or break part
Where's
of
my
this, but-
memory, Edelman Road, is that gonna go all the way through South Street?
No, no, no.
No? Thank you.
All right. Well, then we'll put it on as an action item. We can, if there's any more discussion we need next time. All in agreement on that? Okay. All right. Thanks.
The next item, Mayor, on the agenda, if it's okay, would we go to CED 1? Do we have the
Yep. Trinity Services, by way of Ray Carmody, who is the applicant, is applying for a facade grant for the property located at 1017 South State Street, known as the Roxy Theater. The grant will be used for a complete facade remodel and a new marquee sign. The plans are attached. Because this property is located in historic downtown, the facade improvements as well as the new marquee sign were reviewed and approved by the Heritage and Architecture Commission. This was done on August 18th. In your packet is the elevation G, which identifies the colors to be used on the building, referenced as lighter shades of a green combination. There were several elevation color schemes that were presented that evening. This was the one that was chosen, as well as the style and color of the new marquee. There were some conditions, though, to the elevations in that the purple spheres, which are shown on the plan, will become illuminated, so they project more of a goldish look, so it kind of matches with some of the features on the sign. The sign is going to be a manual changeable copy message board. There was some discussion about doing an LED sign, however, that was a little costly, so they kind of put that aside for right now. Trinity Service, though, however, is routinely represented by Rigsby Builders. I apologize for the incorrect name spelling. And they complete various projects for Trinity. The estimates that are included are having Rigsby Builders as the main contractor. This would be, though, for the facade restoration only, because as it turns out, with the estimates that are comparable for the three various facade improvements, they put them over the top to acquire and be eligible for the 10,000 maximum anyway, so the sign doesn't necessarily need to be included, though the work will be done. So based on the lowest estimate, which was 50% of $51,612, that's at $25,806, which again exceeds and pushes them to be eligible for the $10,000. Since this is the first request for a facade grant this year, there is more than sufficient funding available for this project. The applicant cannot commence work on the facade until the grant has been approved, and then the city will reimburse them after the work is completed, inspected, and the appropriate proof of payment has been provided. Staff is recommending approval of the facade grant in the amount of $10,000. The building is eligible and the work is within the scope. And Brian Rigsby is present if you have any questions.
All right, thoughts, concerns? Yeah, Brian, we're all excited to see it happen, so. All right, I have no problem with the consent agenda. Pretty good with that?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, looking forward to it, Brian, thanks. All right, jump back in order then?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. We can go back to CA1. I've got an extension of a cell tower lease and the AT&T, which is actually through Crown Castle. This is a resolution number 16077 in your packet. One second. So this is the cell tower already existing at the Lockport Police Department. It's been here since 1996. It was a 25-year lease. Crown Council is representing AT&T and looking to extend this lease. Staff has been negotiating with them a little bit. The current one expires in 2021. They'd like to take the next extension out to 2051. That's a 30-year lease. We do have an increase in the rate proposed, which is about 18 to 20% increase, with also a 2.5% escalator each year. A key note is right now we have about 4 antennas in the area, 4 towers in the area. Different towers get different rents, basically because of what's on them. Right now, there's only one tenant on this tower. If they add another tenant to this tower, we would get 15% of those revenues as well. So we think with the market of whether it's T-Mobile or Cricket or whoever else is advertising out there that's going to grow, there's a good chance that we will obviously get additional revenues on top of these. They also have a first right of refusal, which is pretty standard in the contract. So they also offered a one-time kind of re-sign up fee of $3,000. So the lease is in your packet. We've looking for authorization to proceed and put this on the City Council agenda for your approval.
All right, thoughts, questions?
Current one's good till 2021, correct?
Yeah, and this would be a 30-year extension on top of that, so it would be 2051. And then we start receiving the new money actually.
So in 30 years ago, 35 years will say, well, what were they thinking back then?
Well,
Well, if it's 2021,
they're starting to pay a higher rent early, and they'll pay the escalator earlier, so it's a win-win for us. So, yeah, when I first considered a 30-year lease is a long time, but we also felt as long as there was a 2.5% escalator in there each year, that was a safe price.
All right, any issues then? We good? We'll put that on as a consent. Thank you.
If you want to do the budget last and just get through a few of these other items, or?
Let's get through the short items
Yeah,
first.
okay, so the next item, Tom and I have been talking to the Village of Lamont. I think Tom was gonna talk through this boundary agreement, which is Resolution 16076.
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, in 1997, the city of Lockport entered into a boundary agreement with the Village of Lamont. It'll be expiring early next year, and Ben has been in conversations with his counterpart at Lamont, and the thought is to extend the agreement for another 20 years using the same boundary line that's been in existence, not making any changes, and basically continuing the cooperative relationship the city's had with Lamont over the last 20 years. What's before you is the same thing that we did with the Village of New Lenox earlier this year, was to extend the boundary line. Staff is recommending its approval. If you agree, we're recommending that you put it on the November 2nd City Council meeting for final action.
Yeah, I have no problem maintaining it. Anybody have any thoughts?
I do need to correct one thing. There's actually a 30-day notice requirement for extensions of boundary agreements, so that would put us into the December 7th meeting for action. So we would not have it on the next meeting. We would have to publish notice for 30 days and then have it come back to you at the December 7th meeting. Lamont will be on about the same schedule, probably their first meeting in December for final approval also.
All right, you all good? All right, then, thank you, Pete, consent. IDNR here?
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, the city has been working with the Illinois Department of Natural Resources for the parking lot improvements that are part of the bike path project that goes along the I&M Canal. There's a second project, that's the improvement of the 2nd Street Bridge, that's also being discussed with IDNR. The city has a license agreement with IDNR to be able to use the IDNR property for recreational purposes and other purposes. What we're asking the council to do is to amend the existing license agreement that was approved in 2013 to grant permission to make the parking lot improvements part of that license agreement from 2013, and also have IDNR approve the improvements that are going to be made to the 2nd Street Bridge. There is a small fee that the city currently pays. I believe it's $100 a year for the license, and that won't be changing. This is basically IDNR giving the city permission to proceed. Staff is recommending approval of both amendments to the existing license agreement and asking that you put it on your November 2nd meeting for final action.
Okay, anybody have any thoughts or concerns about it?
And Mr. Mayor, members of the council, next item I have for your review is a liquor license matter. There was a packaged liquor store at 1513 South State Street. The tenant went out of business in 2016. The owner, Mr. Pagano, who's present this evening, the tenant basically left. There was some confusion and some miscommunication as to whether there would be another liquor licensee making a request to go into that space. In the interim, when that business closed, there was a request from another business on State Street, the State Street Pantry, about 3 blocks away from this site, to get the packaged liquor license that was previously assigned to 1513 South State Street. The liquor license was assigned to State Street Pantry, but because we have a numerical limit on the number of packaged liquor licenses, there would not be a packaged liquor license available for the former Ranch Liquors at 1513 South State Street. So in order for the mayor, as liquor commissioner, to issue a new license to a new tenant that Mr. Pagano would find, the council would have to create another packaged liquor license. Mr. Pagano would like to address you this evening and encourage you to consider it. We have discussed it at length. The mayor and I have discussed
Council. My name is Frank Pagano. I own the property located on northwest corner of State and Division Street. I purchased it in 1982 as a closed service station. Added to the building a pizza restaurant and remodeled the rest of the building as a USDA plant. Throughout the years, I made a more addition to the building, and around in 1985, I purchased a lot next to my property and built a 2,400 square feet little store. I ran it for several years and sold the business in 2001. For 12 years, my tenant ran well. In 2012, a new tenant didn't do well, and I was forced to evict him. I started remodeling the inside of the store, and I signed up a new lease with a new tenant. When my new tenant applied for the license, I was told that the license was given to another business. Understanding the legal license unlimited, I think that less Class C license were granted over the years. Since then, the city population has grown considerably. My store services the area from downtown, west side, all the way up to the end of Delwood Park. I would like to ask Mr. Mayor and the council to consider getting another license, Class C, available for my store. Thank you.
You know, when, I believe we submitted in writing, we asked Mr. Pagano if he wanted to keep the license. When was that we did that?
That would have been in approximately the middle of May.
Okay.
Business closed probably in April, and then what we normally would do is notify the property owner, because the owner doesn't have the license, it's actually the tenant who has the license, and just letting the owner know that the license has been, it's basically a free agent at that point, it's been released, and if he has another tenant in mind, then we would consider that, since it was previously assigned to that building. As I mentioned, there was some miscommunication, and the license was subsequently assigned after June 1st, which was the deadline for being notified, and to State Street Pantry. So I think the request is, if a bona fide tenant who otherwise qualifies for a liquor license comes forward through Mr. Pagano, would the council consider allowing the issuance of another package liquor license for this specific site?
Can I ask a clarifying question? So the letter in our packet was addressed to someone other than Mr. Pagano, which I assume was the previous owner, business
Owner, the licensee.
Mr. Pagano was also notified as well?
He was copied on that, and I believe he came in, had a verbal conversation with one of our staff members, and I think that there may have been a disconnect at that point where he may or may not have been informed, and I wasn't informed about Mr. Pagano's interest in having the license reserved for a future tenant in his building. It was our understanding, once June 1st came and went, it was a free license, and that's why it was assigned to another existing business down the street that wanted to go from a beer and wine license to a full package license.
I think it's fair that if Mr. Pagano has a reputable business that wants to come in, we take that under consideration. But I also don't know that we necessarily just increase the number, just because.
No, we don't. Well, little backstory about this. I was involved in discussions with the city attorney, city administrator, and mayor. When there was some confusion, there was some confusion. I've also spoken with Mr. Pagano and his wife on 2 occasions. I wasn't aware, and I was the advocate for State Street Pantry getting this license, okay? And they did get the license. It wasn't until August that I got the clarification from Mr. Pagano that there had been some confusion, and my thought process would have been completely different had I had the prior knowledge in May when I was pushing for the State Street Pantry to receive this liquor license. I think it's a fair request think it's a fair request, and I believe that I'm in full support of creating a liquor license.
To add additional thoughts to this topic is, as we mentioned earlier in today's committee, the whole, we have a lot of development, a lot of buildings and homes being built. So as the population grows, there's going to be need for additional liquor license. So for me, it's kind of common sense as the population is growing here in Lockport, we're going to have to eventually increase the number of licenses to accommodate the growth we have here in town.
So I guess my confusion is there someone already that would like to go into your space that needs a liquor license? I guess that's what I'm not quite, totally.
Frank, if you don't mind, can you come up to the microphone?
Beside the confusion, I had already tenant that had signed a lease and came over and applied for it. But it was turned down because there is no Class C license available. So the only availability was just a beer license. If I want to run a full, liquor store from 10 o'clock until midnight, selling just beer and wine, the tenant that I signed off, he turned it down. He says, I cannot do that. I had all the inquire about it, but with the premise that it would take a full license. The license doesn't come direct to me, it comes to them. But if there's no license available, I won't be able to rent the place. But the place has been remodeled already 6 months, and it's been empty since then.
Well, I have a few thoughts. One is, I think it's a misconception that Mr. Pagano's liquor license is given to somebody else. I mean, we have a code and we have so many liquor licenses, and that liquor license was no longer being utilized by a tenant, and there was another applicant, and they fit the criteria, and they got a liquor license.
once I thought no longer needed across the street, I gave it to a different petitioner. So the next question then is, I understand the population growth, and I think that's true, but we're putting two package liquor stores almost across the street from one another. It's not like we're opening a package liquor store, in a different part of town where a lot of population growth is, which if that were the thought process, just population growth, that probably would be, think about where it's going to be placed instead of putting two on top of one another. That said, even Frank, I've already met with you once. You brought in a petitioner. I told you, I said, if you feel like there's a person that's the right fit and has the right background, I of course would go to council with it. So I still stand by that. I don't necessarily feel like it's the right thing to create a liquor license and put it out there, but you bring the right petitioner and we can come back here and talk about it. I think that's the right way to do it.
Would you be able to have that potential tenant here at the first meeting in November before he's gone?
It's a catch-22.
budget, and I think the ones that are in the budget with some reasonableness make some sense. I'm not objecting to anything specific, but more of a procedure, I think. It's a thought, right? I want to hear others' opinion. That's kind of my opinion. That's the one thing that gets me year after year after year is kind of the employees, where are we at? And I think that's
So what you're asking here is to say, well, as we don't need this one until, say, April. Yours is
to me, that's the function. It's kind of guidance stuff. Some guidance in place. Understanding why essentially. And things changed, right? Whatever it is, whatever the reason we think it is this year, it might be different in June next year. Maybe we'll hire some stuff like that. Just kind of my thought.
I don't see any harm in it, so.
Sometimes it can be really informal, right? I mean, if we have 3 police officers or whatever next month, the chief could put through a memo, we would pay for that for the police officers. Like, he doesn't need to be there. There are some that we might want to talk a little bit more about, but. My goal isn't to kind of be obstructive here.
I think as far as process goes, it's fine. I mean, we're looking at 3 people. It's not like they're budgeting for any ads. I think, I feel pretty strongly that we need to get our director of public works on here. Is building maintenance part-time worker, and we reassess that later, or when Ben comes to us with it.
I think we've had a precedence where key personnel, department heads in particular, have come before council in the past, whether it was Terry or whatever. Certainly, we can extend that to all personnel. It's certainly no more than justification of the council, no discussion, debate before it's done. We would do that in advance of posting. We would want the council approval to expend those funds. That's not wrong.
So I have a question, Lisa, on things, and it has to do with as we draw down reserves. There comes a point where we want to be able to keep some money in the bank. And I think you mentioned this to me briefly, and I was wondering if you can help guide us a little bit, JC too, because I can trust your opinions on this. As we get to a point, instead of drawing down reserves to 0 for capital projects, that we stop at a certain point so that we make sure we have money in the bank, and then we begin to look at paying for capital in the future through bonds. That way, if projects go over, then we don't have to panic and say, I have no more money in my savings account, essentially. So we could essentially have, and so I'm trying to figure out what the magic number is. When we've had a lot of money in reserves, and I've always believed, I think the council's always been we all agree with this. We as taxpayers don't put money into a pot to just watch it sit there. We're not leprechauns. We use it. That's why we all put it together to get stuff done. But if we get down to a certain level in the pot, we make sure we put that pot aside and say, okay, how are we going to move forward in the coming years? You know, we don't have a reserve build up. We start doing bonds. Well, what's the number? How low do we let the pot go before you think we should stop and keep a chunk of cash in there? That's my question.
Well, that definitely is a council decision to make, okay? Does this make me uncomfortable? Yes, a little bit, to only have in the general fund. On here, it shows you in that first line that the excess reserves are $65,000. That's not much. That doesn't leave us much leeway for a project to go over. So what I'm hoping is that as we start to bid out each of our projects next year, that
good. I guess it's off a little bit from my question. My original question is, we have been able to do a lot of capital because we've had money in the reserve that hadn't been spent. Decided as a council to be aggressive, which I think is right. As that number that we've been able to be aggressive with gets lower, we can't maintain the level of construction we have been doing forever. You know, you've shared with me that once those reserves are gone, we pretty much have about $1 million a year, you know, to do work with, which is sensibly very little. So that's where we go to bond, right? Say, okay, we're gonna take out a $10 million bond and really hit hard with these things, and that's fine. How much though, going down to zero in our savings account before we go to bond is, I'm thinking that wise. How much do we leave in the savings account before we go to the bond and start doing those things so that we can, are you telling me after this year there's only gonna be $65,000 left in the savings account forever?
Okay, so the first one shows you, see down there at the bottom, it's 2.7 million. But remember, that's across funds, that's multiple funds. Water funds cannot be used for for general street purposes and vice versa. So should we be sitting on excess reserves in the general fund? No. Is that 65,000 right there in its one line? No, because I still have a couple $1 million. My required reserve in the general fund is 4.7 million. That's how much I'm required. We're always gonna keep that. We're not gonna spend down enough to erode
We need that for
that.
operating expenses.
That's
We keep that in
operating.
case Armageddon happens, we
Right.
can still do things.
So I don't need the excess sitting in the general fund, but it's in the capital projects fund where I only have 460,000. Is that enough of a savings account for you?
And that's where I'm going. So how much is left in the capital fund that we're comfortable with having that there as we move forward? Instead of keep spending that 460 in the future, leaving $400,000 there as we go for bond. So we always have that there. We don't go down to $20,000 in the, capital projects fund before we start bond. So that's the number.
Okay, all right, so that's the number you feel comfortable in having. I think that was the question. What is that number that we should have in the account to be available?
Yeah,
And you said it's up to the council. Well, but we need the direction from you. What is
I'll weigh one thing. So I think these are really good conversations that we need to figure out. But also, we're at really high capital spending, right? If we're in the future where we have $1 million to spend a year, a fair reserve is a lot less than this year where we're spending $25 million, right? If we're only going to spend $1 million and we have a $400,000 reserve, we could have our projects overrun by 38% and still be fine. When we're looking at spending $25 million, now a 10% overrun becomes a huge issue. So it's all relative. It's a really good question, something we probably need to work on a little bit more. But I don't know that there's a perfectly simple answer either. $100,000 means a lot, means a different amount, means a different thing depending on what you're spending.
But I don't think all our projects are over either. I mean, right? I mean, we have projects that come under too. Maybe not a lot, but they do, right? I mean, they do.
Yeah, this year they have, yes, this year.
Yeah, I mean, the mayor brought that up to me too, and I think it's a really good point. I mean, at some point, we're going to need to bond to complete all the projects in our CIP. I mean, that's inevitable. So I don't know if there's, I mean, I leave it to the finance people, if there's some way to figure out whether it's more beneficial for us to bond now if we get a better rate, or if it's more beneficial for us to wait until we expend all of the funds in our reserve account.
Well, that happens next year.
Right,
So,
exactly.
we are really
So,
looking at it.
so either we
the
do it
three-
now or we do it later. I mean, what's going to be more beneficial? When are we going to get a better rate?
Interest rates are at the lowest point. So if you're looking at it, is smart to be doing it next summer when we go out for the one bond that we were going to do to make it a bigger one. Absolutely. I think that that's the wise thing to do in today's market. What's going to happen after election, where the interest rates go with the Federal Reserve, we're going to be watching that very closely. But we are at all-time lows right now for bond interest rates. We've got a great credit rating. So, I think we're taking all the right steps in the right direction. But yes, if your question is, does this make me nervous? Absolutely. Would I like to see you go out for a bigger bond next year? Yes. So that we could manage our spend down of our reserves, and we're not looking at spending $11 million of reserves all in one year. Absolutely. CIP, accomplishing everything. So I identified what projects we could do in 17, 18, and 19 based on the revenues we had. And then I identified for you all the projects that were left just in the CIP, not anything that's been identified outside of it, but what has been identified in the CIP. And there was another $10 million. That's the projects that have been identified in the CIP that have yet to have a year put on them. That's what we're looking at. So yes, I do think that this conversation needs to ensue maybe next summer before we go out for a bond and making that decision.
Don't forget, we have a $10 million bond that we
because IDOT is including that in their project, if they run into something that's underground, that's, you know, that will be theirs to remedy as part of the project. But there are the water services. I am anticipating that that could be our wild card on that job. Because, you know, there may be services that are run like non-traditionally that need to be addressed. There could be, you know, we could end up with services that aren't deep enough, that have to be, we have to have a rock excavation, similar to what we ran into on the Beamy Street project, as the services that were crossing State Street. So, you know, those things are up in the air. I would anticipate that, you know, I'm sure that Strand is putting some cushion in this project for those instances, but I'm thinking if we run into any wild cards on that project, it's going to be water services.
We have bumped those contingencies a little higher than typical, and those are included in this. And Strand did include some service lateral work that we just knew was going to have to happen with these older buildings. So we hope that we've encumbered enough, but there's no guarantee.
All right. Any thoughts, questions, any more about our preliminary first look?
I like the aggressive approach that you put forth on this. Again, it's a document we can change or whatever we want as time goes, right, Amy? I mean, I think it's a good approach. I think there's some good points here that need to be done. Get down to it, we can't do it. Let's say we couldn't get to it because of funding. That's the way I look at it. That's my take. So.
All right, so what's our next step there, Lisa?
So next week, not next week, but our next council meeting at the city council meeting is going to be the public hearing. So we'll open this up for comment from the public.
All right, anything else?
Yes, the budget. The same thing that was in your packet is posted on the website in detail, line by line, if people want to see any particular item. But the entire PowerPoint will be out on the website tomorrow morning. So we'll upload that whole thing for, you know, the media or anybody else that wants to take a look at this.
Yeah, and I encourage people, you know, watching or listening to this later to feel free to come out and talk about the budget. It's our budget, meaning us as citizens. So their input is welcome, and that's what we have this open council meeting for. All right, nothing else. I think that is at the end of our committee of the whole. Any new business anybody wants to draw?
Something real quick. About a week ago, my daughter goes, Daddy, come down here. I was in my home office, and I went downstairs to look at the TV because she was yelling, Lockport's on TV. So I figured, well, maybe Lockport's on the news or whatever. Well, it turned out she was watching one of her Nickelodeon shows called Henry Danger. And Henry Danger is one of those shows where it's for preteens on Nickelodeon, and they have an aerial view of a town, and that's the town where the characters live. And it turns out that aerial view is Lockport. She put it on pause, and you can see St. Denis all lit up, and you can see City Hall, all the various streets, and it was just a beautiful picture. Cool. Yeah, so Catherine, she put it on Facebook and created a lot of feedback, and I told Father Jim before 11 o'clock Mass, and he announced it. It created a little bit of a buzz that, you know, Lockport had that aerial view, and I'm just so curious, how did that end up being on?
Right, that's pretty
And they always show that picture, and all these years we watched that show, and never noticed it until last week, where our 11-year-old daughter noticed it was Lockport.
It's got to be at least a 6-7-year-old picture, because I saw the bowling alley still there.
Well, it's bowling alley, the golden spire, and church is not there.
Right,
It's
right.
silver. So yeah, it is a little bit older.
They look beautiful.
That probably came from the show Christmas.
Still some footage.
They did a lot. I've actually seen stock footage of Lockport in other shows from that era.
I still think one of the best, like, shots of Lockport ever was when the Johnny Depp movie. He's sitting out here in front of he's sitting in front of City Hall, and behind him is the Gladys Fox Museum, and it's a really long shot as they're having a conversation. That was a great shot. All right, very cool. All right, anything else? All right, my friends, can I have a motion to adjourn Committee of the Whole?
Make that motion.
Second.
Chris, seconded by JR, all in favor?
Aye.
All right, I think we have a fairly light,
Just need a moment for Alice to turn the graphics around, but yeah, we can, if it's okay, we can just keep going.
Anyone know the score of the Cub game? We had a
4-0.
wonderful prayer earlier. Our
What,
prayers
Cubs?
being answered. What's that?
what's the score?
4-0 Cubs are up.
4-0.
Oh, wow.
Bottom of the fourth. So far, so good.
What is sight? Oh, is it tied? For real? Is that what they're saying? Oh. No, not really.
0-0, yeah.
Okay. Alderman Dukakis is absent. Alderman Capitano.
Here.
Alderman Mosley.
Here.
Alderman Smith.
Here.
Alderman Desmond.
Here.
Vandermeer.
Here.
Here.
All right, my friends, looking to have a motion for a consent agenda. I'll make a motion. JR,
Second.
seconded by Joanne, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay. On the consent agenda for today are the October 5th regular city council meeting minutes, the October 5th committee of the whole meeting minutes, our payroll period ending October 9th, approval of various bills, the wastewater treatment plant capacity evaluation, for 64.5, and then the Milne Creek stream bank stabilization, which was resolution number 16073. So, looking for a motion to approve.
Second.
It's sorry. Sorry, yes, the other P. And then JR, is that JR, second it, sorry. Sorry, Bob. All right, can I have a roll call?
Sure. Who seconded that? I just, oh, we did. Thank you.
Yes.
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 All right. Good heavens, looks like we have one thing. AT1. Let's talk about AT. Let's have looking for a motion to approve. This is the resolution authorizing the acquisition of the real property. This is that house that we needed to purchase.
I'll make that motion. I'll second.
All right, so Darren, seconded by JR. Any other thoughts, concerns, anything staff needs to add to this?
Yeah, 16079, we've negotiated, Tom has dealt with their attorney, and we have an actual sales contract. We said we'd bring this back to you at the time. We spoke in September about this. Their purchasing price is $150,000. I think I budgeted $155,000, so I think we're within what we plan to spend. I think I've got, just to give you another update, I've got, I budgeted $25,000 for demolition. I think I got the bid for like 15, and we left 20,000 in contingency. So this is certainly within the scope of the finances that we had set forth in September. And Tom and I are seeking approval.
All right. Anything else up here? All right, can I have a roll call, Alice?
Yes.
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 All right. That being said, we're looking for a motion to adjourn.
Make a motion.